from mindfulbee.com and your tribe. The journey to success comes with all kinds of different experiences, and one of them can sometimes be feeling alone, but you're never really alone. So come and join in on our discussions as we meet with others also on their journey here on Crossing Paths. Welcome, beautiful minds. Welcome. And today on Crossing Paths, I would like to introduce an amazing podcast, Gentleman Style Podcast. Yes, Gentleman Style Podcast, okay? It's an amazing podcast. Listen to it. Be enlightened with information about wealth, talks about God, family, life, and relationships. Let's do it, guys. Let's find out about who is behind Gentleman Style Podcast. Let's get into it on Crossing Paths. Gentleman Style Podcast here. And welcome, beautiful minds. I would like to introduce to you today a man who is dedicated to sharing his knowledge and encouraging young men to find their higher selves in a time where the world seems to be tearing them down. He also is sharing ways on gaining wealth, which he has conversations with professionals already in the area. I am so happy to cross paths with him today, and I'd like for you to get to know him as well. Welcome, Marcus Norman. How are you today?
Fantastic. Thank you for having me. I'm so honored and so excited to be here. I really appreciate you, and you look fantastic in that shirt. And thank you for allowing me to be here.
Of course. I couldn't go without this great podcast. I really love the podcast. When I first started hearing your podcast and all the knowledge that you were giving to people about how they can build money, real estate, and so many different things. It wasn't just that, family, life, relationships. I was really intrigued, and I look forward to the posts, the videos, everything, so I can actually get in. So I would love to, let anybody else hear about this.
Thank you.
Let's start off with who you are. Can you tell me a little bit more about who is Marcus Norman?
Sure. Marcus Norman is a 34-year-old God-fearing man who resides in Virginia. But I made my way here via the military from the Caribbean. We grew up together, so that's how we knew each other. We grew up on a small island called St. Croix. And that I joined and left the island via the military and found myself here. I served 8 years, so I'm a veteran, and I got out in 2014. And so the man before you today is vastly different from the young man that you met in high school. And also, when I got out of the military in 2014, I joined the military in 2006. And so the world is constantly changing. The world is constantly evolving. And I quickly realized that what worked in 2006 no longer worked or applicable in 2014. So I had to adapt and change with the world around me. I remember going into a job and applying for a job, and that was it. That's all you need. You need a good job, you need a good wife and a good home, and married and all of that. And that no longer worked.
Yeah, it doesn't apply today.
It doesn't apply today. You gotta
have
now
multiple streams of income. You gotta have the best job out there. You have to work for yourself, to be honest, in order for you to thrive.
Yeah, because you are the best investment, right? Stocks, bonds, mutual funds, all of those things are great, but knowledge, right? Knowledge is power. And what I started my podcast about is to have a single location to talk about everything: real estate, cryptocurrency, metaverse, small business investing, equity investing, relationships, sex. We are not doing well in relationships. We are not having sex. And so my podcast covers a wide scope of different things that we need to thrive in this new age economy. And so that's what the podcast is about. And that's the man that you have before you today.
Awesome. Yes, a man who sees that we're in a different place right now and that we have to make changes to move forward and thrive. I love it. Well, first of all, again with the shirt, Gentlemen's Style Podcast. How did you come up with that name for your podcast?
So I was raised by my father, and my dad told me, son, you have a problem. You are a knight in shining armor. You have this loving, nurturing mindset, and you want to help everybody and you want to save everybody, but you can't. And so I didn't want to say Knight in Shining Armor podcast. So what is the next best thing? You remember in high school, I was never a thug, right? I was never
Yeah,
gangster. I was a horrible gangster. I was never that guy, but I was an academic, and I always was a gentleman.
a gentleman. Yes, that's true.
And so, yeah, so gentleman style podcast, trying to shift the focus from the scene of rappers and you know bitches and hoes and all of those things and talk about gentlemen. Getting back to being a gentleman is the core of what a real man should be. And that's a gentleman is very vast and he's very professional, but he's also loving, nurturing, which are things that we don't do well, and courteous. And he's also knowledgeable. Any person, I say this to any person, anyone can come to me and I can teach and speak to a wide spectrum of things. But what I can't give you is passion. You have to want it on your own. And so a gentleman is incorporated of those things. So Gentleman Style Podcast was the name of it. If this was a lady show, if this was a ladies podcast, it'd be Lady Style Podcast. But I'm the CEO and founder, so it's called Gentleman Style.
And it suits you well. It really suits you well. That's another thing. I saw a lot of suits and shoes. For a second, I thought you were, selling some, professional outfits, but it all falls into the whole category of just being a gentleman, presenting yourself as a gentleman, and of course, then everything else you have on the website, which is gaining that knowledge, moving forward, uh, being prepared for the future. What are some of your interests that got you into this? Like, what are your interests?
Some of my favorite interests is real estate. I started with real estate. That was my first major project. And so I own physical real estate, a hard asset, but I also have digital real estate as well. And I had to learn about myself. Whenever investing, you have to realize something about it yourself. What kind of investor, who you are. And I found that investor, Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, he talks about the cash flow quadrant. Which are you? Self-employed, employee, investor, and all those other categories, right? I found that I wanted to be an investor. I
Mhm.
was a terrible employee. I'm a terrible employee. But I make a great leader and I make a great investor. And investors are people who get to shape the world in the
Mhm.
way you want it and get to make the world into what you see fit. If you want there to be a cure for cancer, then you can put money behind it and now you are shaping the future of because you put money behind it and you want it to look this way.
Right, right.
So I chose investor. And so my favorite investment was in real estate. Now I've branched off into other different numerous investment classes. My second favorite is the ATM business, which I also do as well. So those are my core favorites right now.
Nice, nice. You're definitely on the money when it comes to interest, which is good,
Yeah.
good. And it's funny because I was talking to a friend of mine, and we were talking about real estate. They were trying to get into real estate and stuff like that. And I was like, well, when you look at the future, the new real estate is going to be digital real estate. And honestly, it's not even in the future, as you just stated. You're into digital real estate, and that's something that's already happening right now. So we definitely want to hear that on Gentleman Podcast. I'm going to look for that. Okay.
Yeah.
More into information on that. Well, when did you get started with your podcast and the real estate, all of that? When did that all start?
I've been doing great question. So I've been doing podcasting since 2014. The same time I got out the military, and real estate was something I had, but it wasn't a concept that I did. So I bought my first home. I made the mistake, right?
Mm-hmm.
I got the I got the education, I got the wife, I got the marriage, I got the house, the big story house. I lost the marriage, but I still had the other things. I still
Yeah.
had the other things. So I had the house. I had this big old house, and I said, "What do I do with this house?" And so someone jokingly said to me, "Marcus, why don't you rent out that house and it'll make money for you?" So within the span of an hour, I posted an ad. I expected nothing from it. In the span of an hour, I got one applicant. Second hour, he showed up at the door. The third hour, I had collected security deposit, first and last month's rent.
Wow.
In 3 hours, I had made several $1,000s in a
Wow.
short amount of time. And so I realized this is where I need to be. That was the easiest and fastest money because people will always need a
Need a home.
place to stay. And
Mhm.
so podcasting and real estate kind of came synonymously because when I learned that, I said, I got to talk about this. I need to share what I just did. And so that's how the podcast kind of coincided with the real estate because I learned, and as I learned, I wanted to give back and I wanted to share that information. And so as I grow, my podcast grows with me. And as I learn more, I share more.
Yes. Beautiful. Oh, wow. That's amazing. I would have never known that was your story. Oh my goodness. So, okay. Seeing that, you already tried being successful with everything that we thought was how we're supposed to be, the marriage, the house, the all of that, and you saw how that ended up, or you experienced how that ended up. What is success to you now?
Success to me now is time. Success to me now is the amount of freedom that you get to do the things you enjoy. I am, a lot of people say to me, Marcus, you're going to be wealthy. I'm not chasing wealth, I'm chasing freedom. And people can attain that freedom in so many different ways, right? If some people, if they budget correctly and they cut certain expenses, they can be free today. It doesn't necessarily have to be this large dollar amount, but it has to equivocate to time. Robert Kiyosaki talks about it. It's time. How much free time? If you lost your job today, how much free time do you have before you would need another one? And if the answer is, I never need another job again because I'm actually making enough through my passive income streams, through my business, through other things, then why are you still working? I can be free today. So I equivocate, I look at success as time. How much time do you have of your own? Your employer tells you when to wake up, when to take a break, when to go to lunch, when to come back, how long you're staying, when you're getting off, when you're going to see your family, when you can go on vacation. I need to prove your vacation. All of these
Right.
things are controlled by someone else. And so time is in my opinion is the best success of all because you can't get it back.
Oh, that was so beautifully said. And I totally agree. Boy, that time, you don't really realize how precious time is until you start getting up in age, and it's like, wait, what did I do in the last 10 years? But I mean,
Flew
I was
by.
gonna ask you what inspired you behind your work, but it's clear what inspired you behind your work. I mean, you can talk more on it just in case there was anything missed, but it sounds like what inspired you from your work is the experience that you had getting into it, period.
Yeah, getting into it. When I left the military, I thought I was going back to a world that I knew that I was familiar with, and I didn't. I had to adapt. I had to change really quickly. And when I changed and I grew and I learned, I realized my biggest inspiration was me. Just like you said, you just said it, right? I'm getting older. I'm 34 years old. I'm getting older, and things are starting to ache more. And when I was a young man, right, I could do it all. I was nonstop, but I was trading my body for money and not my brain. And
Right.
so I switched and I revamped, and now I use my mind versus my body because this I'm going to take care of this vessel, but in the meantime, I have a very, very strong brain. And I need to stretch that muscle instead as I age and as I grow older. So my motivation is again that freedom to do the things and share the things that help other people and give back. My ultimate goal is philanthropy. I want to invest in the things that make the world a better place. And unfortunately, you need money to do that. But I think if you can leave this world, what if you died today, what would they remember you for? What would they write on your headstone? And if you can leave the world better than where you left it, then I consider that a form of success as well.
Mm-hmm.
Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, despite disregard whatever's going on with them right now, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation was started because they wanted to make the world a better place, and to know that that foundation created potable water and plumbing and bathroom. You don't realize how necessary a bathroom is and sewage is until you don't have it. You go to a
Right.
country that doesn't have it, and they were able to fund and build a potable water system that doesn't require electricity, doesn't require pre-installed sewage system, and develop it in a country, in Africa, in a county, in a city that had no plumbing. And they were able to do that and make that change in a community. And so that's the ultimate goal for me, is to leave this world better than how I found it.
Right. Being able to leave this world and say that you left something behind that can actually not only inspire others, but help others go forward to keep the future running. That's a good way to go out.
It is.
Go to sleep happy now. So let's just hear more about what you have to offer. You have your podcast that's there to not only motivate gentlemen, but also to educate people about wealth. And then you also talk about real estate and how you're a real estate investor. What can you tell us more about that?
So my podcast is named Gentleman Style, but it's for women and men. So I want to make that distinction. This is not a man only show. The things and the guests that I bring onto the show are talking about topics that can benefit men and women. A prime example, I had a guest on the show who she created a doll, uh, a doll that talks about women in STEM, and it educates girls, young girls, to be inspired and motivated to go into science and technology courses and classes and become scientists themselves, because that is a huge deficit in the market. You don't see a lot of women in STEM. And so she created a robotic doll that teaches young girls and inspire young girls and educates young girls. So my show is for the betterment of men and women. And so real estate investing, what can I talk about that? I have learned a lot. I've taken a lot of lumps along the way, but today it is still the best investment I ever made. And it was an investment in myself. And so real estate goes as far back as the Egyptians, right? That's not going away. And so again, when you go into real estate, you have to do one thing first. You need to figure out who you are and what kind of investor you want to be. Do you want to be the investor who owns physical, tangible real estate and manage it yourself? Or do you want to be, which is I'm that this type where I sit back, I have the real estate, I own the building, but someone else manages it for me, and so I can do other things. That's how I'm able to do so many different things. I'm launching a CBD business at the end of this month, and that takes time, that takes focus, that takes energy. And so if I was physically in the real estate, I couldn't do the podcast. If I was physically in the real estate, I couldn't do anything else that I desired to do. And so I free my time and I pay people well to manage those things for me, so I can work on bigger projects. Educate yourself. The biggest thing is educate yourself. And like I said, Gentleman Style Podcast is a one-stop shop for whatever you're looking for.
Right.
If and so if you just got your stimulus check and you got that PPP money, as long as it's not illegal money, right? If you got it legally, take that money and educate yourself. Again, you are the best investment that you can make in yourself. And educating yourself and stimulating this and working this will pay huge dividends down the road. The last point is take action, no matter what it is. I don't care if it's cryptocurrency. I don't care if you invest in real estate. I don't care if you invest in anything, but take action. Just do it. Stop being scared. Stop being nervous. And don't get caught in analysis paralysis, right? Don't just research. at some point you have to move. You have to do the thing that you may or may not like, and you'll discover who you are in that process. And if you don't like it, get rid of it, sell it, sell it off, or shut the business down. But you learn every step of the way. And that's how I operate. I was courting a young woman at the time, and she was like, Marcus, you literally, like, 1 month, like today, I had a conversation with her and I said, this is an old relationship. This is not a current relationship. But this young lady, I was like, man, I'm thinking about the ATM business. The next month, I had bought books, watched YouTube channels, took courses, classes. The next month, I had my first ATM delivered.
Nice.
And she was shocked by this because she was like, what in the world? You just mentioned this a couple weeks ago. So I researched, I learned, I educated myself, but then I took action on the thing. Right. I didn't just sit there and research it to death. And that is what we don't do. We research it to death. We research, and we never move. I move on the topics and the things that interest me.
Yes. You're not the only person that said that, and I feel like that was supposed to be for me. But no, I was talking to another friend of mine, and they travel a lot, travel so much, and I'm like, you always jumping from state to state or country to country, and he's like, yeah, well, I just gotta do it. I can't think about it. Just gotta do it, because when you think about it, sometimes you overthink it, and then you think yourself out of it. So when that thought comes, just if that's what you want to do it. And I love that. That's the message that you're sharing right now. The knowledge that you're providing. Like I said, people need to hear this. Those who want to really come up and make something out of themselves in the near future. And it's your podcast, Gentleman Style Podcast. I always felt like it wasn't just for men, but I didn't feel no way about this title. To be honest, a lot of times it would slip my mind, the name of the title, the name of the podcast, and I'd be like, how do I find him? But this logo right here always saves me. I was able to find a little, I was like, oh yeah, that's him right there. Let me go ahead and listen in. So while we're talking about how to find you, let us know how we can get to your podcast and how we can get to the information that you have and whatever other services that you have to offer.
Absolutely. So I can be found on most media platforms. The podcast itself is on every platform you can imagine. I am on Spotify, Audible, Facebook business page, YouTube, Apple Play, Google Play, Spotify, everything. Anything that you can find media, my podcast is on. If you want to find me, just search my name, Marcus Norman. And you'll see the connection, and you'll see, because everything about me is relationships and podcasting and investing. And so that's how you can connect with me. Again, YouTube, look for the microphone. If you remember nothing else, Gentleman Style, look for the microphone, and you'll find
that microphone. It's a lifesaver in so many ways. And I just want to thank you so much for joining in on this interview. Gentleman Style Podcast is a really great podcast, and when you follow them on Facebook and on Instagram, you get to be involved in a lot of the conversations revolving around relationships, and I get so excited looking for those and seeing the comments behind them, because there's really some activity going on inside of those posts. So thank you again for joining and sharing so much. It was a pleasure having you on here on Crossing Paths, and continue to be great out there.
Thank you. It's my honor. Thank you for having me. This was fun.